The cosmos gasped. An unidentified Terran craft materialized mid-skirmish. Scarlet warnings pulsed across Apex Outpost as another hit from the Xylos Armada jarred the structure. Commander Jax Talon gripped the rim of the tactical console to steady his balance. The station trembled underfoot. On the primary display, he observed the immense Xylos fleet encircling them. Innumerable battleships, with their distinctively spiked hulls, eliminated any hope of retreat. Their armaments glowed fiercely, preparing for the next assault. "Deflector shields registering at 28%, Commander," reported Liam Parker from the sensor bay. The young officer's face was ashen, but his gaze was resolute. Perspiration beaded on his brow as his fingers danced over his interface. Jax gave a tight, grim nod. "How much time until a complete shield failure?" The station's artificial mind responded in its even, synthesized tone. "Based on the current bombardment rate, full shield collapse is imminent in 22 minutes. Around the large circular briefing table at the command deck's core, delegates from 7 distinct extraterrestrial races shouted in disagreement. Once bitter foes, these species had united against the unstoppable Xylos dominion. The Xylos had subsumed half the known sector in a mere 5 cycles, and now Apex Outpost, the final Confederate bastion in the Arc of Sagittarius, was on the verge of annihilation. Admiral Zethara slammed his plated gauntlet onto the table. The tall, lizard-like Tharan's voice roared above the clamor. "We must extract critical personnel while the opportunity remains." General Korax of the Rhino-featured Danu shook his massive horned head. "Capitulation is preferable to utter destruction. The Xylos never honor terms of surrender." "Everyone is aware of this," hissed Ambassador Nar. The slender, azure-skinned Meridan's large eyes flickered rapidly with terror. Jax raised his hands, attempting to quell the arguing aliens. "Cease! We require cohesion!" A priority communal alert cut him short. The main display shifted to show Captain Serena Miller aboard the Erishian flagship. Her metallic uniform gleamed, despite the evident devastation behind her on her own bridge. "Commander Talon," she said, her voice sputtering through electromagnetic interference. "Our support vessels have been intercepted near the Velos asteroid belt. They will not arrive for a minimum of 6 hours. Jax closed his eyes for a fraction of a second. 6 hours? They possessed barely 30 minutes of remaining shield energy. "Duly noted, Captain. Execute what maneuvers you can," he replied, maintaining a steady tone despite the cold dread in his gut. As he turned to address the coalition envoys, Liam yelled above the din, "Commander, an unidentified signature is appearing on the scanners." Jax spun around. "Xylos reinforcements?" "Negative, sir." Liam's eyes widened as he fixated on his screen. "It's something entirely different. A single vessel just materialized from nothingness. It was absent a moment ago, and now it sits directly between us and the Xylos Supreme Command vessel." The argument ceased as all eyes turned to the main viewport. The image focused on a sleek obsidian vessel, unlike anything they had ever encountered. It bore no visible weapon apertures, but its smooth, almost predatory contours hinted at immense capability. It transmitted no identity signals and did not match any entry in their extensive database. Preliminary analyses reveal an element unknown to interstellar science in its hull matrix. It is not utilizing any concealment tech we recognize. It's as though it simply coalesced from emptiness. The enigmatic ship was minuscule in contrast to the colossal Xylos flagship it confronted, yet it showed no signs of retreating. It simply hovered in place, positioned precisely in the path of fire. "Are they responding to hails?" asked Jax, unable to tear his gaze from the bizarre ship. Communications Officer Dana Lee nodded. "They are initiating a connection now, sir." The screen flickered, and a Terran face appeared.
A woman with short dark hair and resolute eyes looked out at us from what was clearly the command bridge of the mystery ship. She wore a dark blue uniform with silver detailing and 4 small markings on her collar. "Apex Outpost, this is Captain Olivia Grant of the Earth vessel Valiant," she stated calmly, as if materializing suddenly into a doomed battle was completely standard. A stunned silence enveloped the command deck. The coalition members froze in confusion. Humans were widely believed to be a nascent species, confined to their originating system, barely capable of reaching their own satellite. The sparse reports on Earth classified Terrans as a pre-hyperdrive culture, at least centuries distant from joining the Galactic collective. Yet here stood a human leading what seemed to be the most sophisticated warship anyone had ever seen. "Captain Grant," Jax finally managed to utter. "We were unaware Earth possessed ships capable of interstellar transit." A faint smile touched Captain Grant's lips. "There is much about Terra not logged in your archives, Commander. We have preferred discretion until this moment." The station rattled again as another surge from the Xylos fleet struck their failing shields. "Deflector power at 23%, the AI announced. Captain Grant's expression grew serious. "It appears you require immediate intervention." Before Jax could respond, Admiral Zethara surged forward, his reptilian visage contorted with skepticism. "Who are you truly? Humans lack this capability. Is this some Xylos deception?" "I assure you, Admiral, we are precisely who we claim to be. Earth has elected to mask its capacities from the wider society for reasons I would gladly elaborate on later, assuming your priority is survival over the next 20 minutes. On a secondary monitor, Jax could observe the Xylos fleet reacting to the newcomer. Dozens of battleships were breaking formation, redirecting their attention toward the small Terran vessel. "Captain," Jax urged, "the Xylos are targeting your ship. You must disengage immediately. Your vessel may be advanced, but nothing can withstand that volume of Xylos firepower." The supreme warlord of the Xylos fleet, Dracon, suddenly appeared on a separate communication channel. His gray-ridged face was filled with utter disdain as he addressed us. "Unregistered vessel, you have interfered with an imperial seizure. Surrender immediately or be obliterated alongside this paltry outpost." Captain Grant seemed utterly unconcerned. She glanced at something off-screen, then looked back at Jax, completely ignoring the Xylos leader. "Commander Nelson—" "Talon," she corrected smoothly. "I suggest you divert power to your external displays. You may wish to witness this." 50 Xylos battleships unleashed their firepower at once, their energy conduits creating a deluge of deadly light aimed at the tiny Terran craft. Jax held his breath, certain he was about to witness the annihilation of the mysterious ship and its courageous crew. Instead, the impossible occurred. The Valiant's hull absorbed the direct impacts from the Xylos plasma cannons without any visible harm. Then, with surgical exactitude, the human vessel discharged what appeared to be simple kinetic rounds, but they moved at unimaginable velocities, tearing through Xylos deflectors designed to repel energy attacks. 5 Xylos destroyers disintegrated into clouds of debris within seconds.
"What in the 7 celestial bodies?" whispered General Corax, his deep voice filled with astonishment. The entire command center watched in shocked silence as the Terran vessel moved with preternatural swiftness, outmaneuvering Xylos ships half its bulk. Confederate scientists frantically analyzed sensor data, detecting what they believed were controlled gravity distortions surrounding the human ship. 300 Xylos interceptors launched toward the Valiant. Captain Grant sighed audibly on the still open channel. Honestly, we had hoped for a more rational response. A dome of cerulean energy expanded from the Valiant, and as it swept through the fighter swarm, their engines simply deactivated.
300 Xylos fighters drifted inertly in space. Station Weapons Specialist Lieutenant Aaron Clark finally broke the silence. "Whatever that technology is, it has fundamentally changed everything." Jax looked at the faces of the coalition delegates. For the first time in many cycles, he saw a glimmer of something he had almost forgotten existed. Hope. The cosmos gasped. An unidentified Terran craft materialized mid-skirmish. Supreme Warlord Dracon watched with mounting fury as 5 of his destroyers drifted as flaming wrecks in the void. Never in his 3 decades leading the Xylos Armada had he encountered such technology. The human vessel moved as if it disregarded the fundamental laws of physics, and its ordnance sliced through deflectors that had endured the combined might of entire alien fleets. "Inconceivable," he snarled, his gray-scaled hide darkening with wrath. His command bridge crew kept their gazes lowered, fearful of meeting his eyes. They had subjugated 1,000 worlds under his dominion, and now they quailed before a single starship. "Reconfigure all weapon systems," he commanded. "Concentrate fire on their propulsion units. No vessel can be absolutely immune." Aboard the Valiant, Captain Olivia Grant remained perfectly composed as her ship evaded vessels 3 times its size. The bridge was unlike anything the coalition forces might have expected from a human craft. There were no physical controls, no touchscreens or switches. The crew stood at positions designated by simple light patterns on the deck, their hands manipulating holographic interfaces visible only to them. "Their heavy cruisers are altering their formation," reported Commander Rhea Hollis, her second in command. Her tall stature remained perfectly stable despite the ship's impossible maneuvers. "They are attempting to encircle us." Captain Grant nodded. "Predictable. They still operate within the framework of conventional space warfare. Engage Phase 2 countermeasures." While the Valiant engaged the Xylos fleet, Commander Jax Talon and the Coalition envoys on Apex Outpost watched in utter silence. The station's science officer, Dr. Aaron Winters, was frantically processing the data streaming from the engagement. "The human ship is manipulating gravity itself," he exclaimed, his voice filled with disbelief. "They are generating localized gravitational fields to deflect directed energy weapons and employing some form of gravity-based acceleration for their kinetic projectiles." "That is utterly impossible," declared Ambassador Neer. "Such science would demand power sources beyond anything known to our disciplines." The station jarred as a stray blast from the battle struck their diminished shields. "Deflector power at 18%, announced the station's AI. "Failure imminent." Jax made a swift decision. "Redirect all non-essential power to the shields. We must endure long enough to observe the outcome of this fight." On the main display, they watched the 300 Xylos fighters drift helplessly, their engines neutralized by the Valiant's energy burst. The Xylos cruisers adjusted their strategy, establishing a tight formation that no ordinary ship could breach without being struck from multiple angles. Captain Grant's voice came over the communication channel again. "Commander Talon, we are about to create a temporary secure corridor to your station. Prepare to receive us. We possess technology capable of reinforcing your shields." Before Jax could respond, the Valiant executed a maneuver that defied all known principles of spacecraft movement. It seemed to compress the space around itself, vanishing from its location and reappearing instantly beside Apex Outpost, having passed straight through the Xylos formation without ever engaging it. "Inconceivable," he snarled, his gray-scaled hide darkening with wrath. His command bridge crew kept their gazes lowered, fearful of meeting his eyes. They had subjugated 1,000 worlds under his dominion, and now they quailed before a single starship. "Reconfigure all weapon systems," he commanded. Concentrate fire on their propulsion units. No vessel can be absolutely immune. Inside Docking Bay 4, a small team led by Security Chief Lisa Brandt waited nervously. The Valiant had docked with remarkable precision, coupling with the station's systems without any direction from their control tower. "Remain alert," Lisa instructed her team. "We know nothing about these Terrans or their genuine objectives." The airlock on the Valiant cycled open, and 3 humans emerged, leading them with Captain Olivia Grant, flanked by Commander Hollis and a woman carrying what appeared to be technical apparatus. "Security Chief," Captain Grant greeted Lisa with a nod. "I am Captain Grant. This is Commander Hollis and Dr. Katrin Wells, our science lead. We need to confer with your commander immediately. The Xylos are regrouping for a unified assault." Lisa hesitated only briefly before guiding them toward the command deck. As they moved through the station's passageways, other coalition species stared openly at the humans. For most, this was their first sight of a species they had deemed primitive. Dr. Wells noted their stares and offered a slight smile. "They appear surprised to see us," Commander Hollis murmured. "What they observed was what we intended for them to see," Captain Grant replied. "We maintained a meticulously constructed facade while our true technology and infrastructure remained hidden." Before she could continue, the station rocked violently. Alarms wailed throughout the command deck. "Multiple Xylos ships are targeting our position," reported Liam from the sensor bay. "They're concentrating fire on the docking apertures. Deflectors at 12%. Failure imminent." Without hesitation, Dr. Wells opened the case she carried and extracted a small glowing device. "Permission to interface with your shield matrix?" Jax nodded quickly. "Granted."
Dr. Wells moved to the engineering station and placed the device against the console. It appeared to meld into the station's systems. Immediately, the shield status readouts transformed, showing new power distributions that the station's engineers had never encountered. "What are you doing?" asked Chief Engineer Alex Forrest, watching in amazement. "Reconfiguring your deflectors to align with the frequency oscillation patterns of our defensive systems," Dr. Wells explained. "The Xylos weapons are effective against standard energy shields, but they cannot pierce our gravitational barrier technology." The station shuddered again as another volley struck, but this time the impact felt significantly diminished. "Deflectors stabilized at 60%, announced the AI, its voice sounding almost surprised despite its programming. On the main viewport, they could see the Xylos fleet repositioning for another assault. Supreme Warlord Dracon's face appeared on the communication channel, his expression incandescent with fury. "Whatever trickery you are employing will not save you. The might of the Xylos Empire cannot be vanquished by a single ship and a crippled outpost." Captain Grant stepped forward, facing the Xylos leader directly for the first time. "This is not about a single ship, Warlord. The Valiant is merely the first to disclose itself." With impeccable timing, the space around the Xylos fleet seemed to shimmer. 6 more ships identical to the Valiant materialized in a perfect circle around the Xylos flagship. Each one had emerged from nothingness, their concealment systems rendering them completely undetectable until they chose to be seen. "Humanity has observed your annexations long enough," Captain Grant continued, her voice steady and resolute. "Your expansion terminates here." The Phantom Fleet and the Proxima Accords. The cosmos gasped. An unidentified Terran craft materialized mid-skirmish. Supreme Warlord Dracon stared at his tactical display in disbelief as 6 additional human vessels appeared around his fleet. Where moments before the Xylos had possessed overwhelming superiority, now they confronted a technology so advanced it seemed supernatural. His tactical officer approached cautiously, fear evident in his posture. "Supreme Warlord, should we reform and request additional reinforcements?" Dracon's pride contended with his military logic. The Xylos Empire had never retreated from combat, but neither had they encountered an adversary with such a pronounced technological advantage. Their scientists had only begun to decipher the human technology they had acquired from the captives. "Pull back to a defensive posture," he ordered at last. "But do not retreat. I require all data on these human vessels to be collected and analyzed. Locate their vulnerability." On Apex Outpost, the command deck had transformed into an ad hoc war council. The coalition representatives huddled around Captain Grant and her officers, their initial suspicion replaced by a desperate sense of hope. Commander Jax Talon stood next to Captain Grant as she explained the situation. "Humanity has maintained surveillance installations throughout this sector for decades. We have observed the Xylos expansion with increasing concern." Admiral Zatharis leaned forward, his reptilian face still displaying traces of mistrust. "If you possess this level of technology, why wait until now to reveal yourselves? Why not halt the Xylos before they decimated so many worlds?" Captain Grant's expression grew serious. "That was our mandate until recently. Non-interference in galactic affairs. We held the belief that civilizations should evolve without our imprint." "What instigated the change?" asked Jax. Commander Hollis answered. 3 cycles ago, the Xylos discovered one of our covert observation posts near the Centauri perimeter. They captured some of our personnel, extracting information through duress." His face hardened with contained fury. "We have been closely tracking their fleet movements ever since, watching them conquer your worlds one by one. Their actions violate every principle we uphold. We could no longer stand idly by." Dr. Wells activated a small device that projected a holographic chart showing galactic territories with Xylos holdings highlighted in red. "The Valiant is but one vessel of our Phantom fleet. We have others positioned throughout the Xylos space." Ambassador Near stepped closer to examine the projection. "Your vessels could have destroyed the Xylos fleet already. Why have you refrained?" "Because we are not aggressors," Captain Grant replied firmly. "Earth is prepared to offer the Coalition a full military compact, technological exchange, and immediate support. But we wish to collaborate with you, not command you." The Coalition representatives exchanged glances. Centuries of political friction and mistrust suddenly seemed insignificant against this new development. General Corax was the first to voice his support. "The Danu accept this alliance," he declared, his deep voice solemn. One by one, the other representatives voiced their acceptance. Jax felt a heavy burden lift from his shoulders for the first time in months. "I believe I speak for all of us when I say your assistance could not have been more timely, Captain." Before Grant could respond, Liam called out from the sensor bay. "Commander, the Xylos flagship is broadcasting a communication." The main screen flickered to life, showing Supreme Warlord Dracon. The Xylos leader's expression was cold and calculating, devoid of his earlier rage. "Coalition forces and Terran intruders, I offer a chance for your immediate capitulation. The Xylos Empire extends mercy to those who acknowledge its dominance." Captain Grant stepped forward. "Warlord Dracon, you are encircled by ships possessing science far beyond your comprehension. Perhaps you should assess your own situation before demanding surrender." Dracon's mouth twisted into what might have been a smile on a Xylos. "An interesting position, human, but perhaps you should be aware that we already possess human samples and have begun adapting their science." The human officers exchanged alarmed glances. Dr. Wells whispered something to Captain Grant, who nodded grimly. "The prisoners from the outpost," Commander Hollis murmured. Dracon continued, savoring their reaction. "Your captured scientists have been most cooperative, though not initially by choice. Surrender now or face annihilation. You have 1 hour to decide." The screen went dark. The command deck erupted in urgent deliberation. Captain Grant turned to her officers. "Dr. Wells, what could they have learned from our captured personnel?" The science officer looked concerned. "If they've had access to our people for 3 cycles, they could have a rudimentary understanding of our deflector technology, possibly early designs for gravitonic weaponry, but they couldn't possibly have mastered implementation without our material science." Jax interrupted. Can your ships withstand an attack if they've adapted some of your technology? We must determine precisely what they know, Captain Grant decided. She tapped a small device on her waist. Grant to all Phantom ships, maintain defensive stations, but scan the Xylos vessels for any indications of adapted human technology. The ensuing hour was dedicated to intense preparation. Dr. Wells collaborated with station engineers to further fortify their shields and weapon systems. Commander Hollis reviewed tactical maneuvers with Admiral Zatharis and General Corax. Throughout the station, Coalition forces prepared for battle with renewed optimism. Captain Grant and Commander Jax met in a small briefing room studying the latest intelligence reports. "You've been fighting them for years," Captain Grant noted. "What's your evaluation of Dracon?" Jax considered the question. "He's ruthless, but not reckless. If he's issuing threats rather than attacking instantly, he's uncertain of his odds. I don't believe he would bluff about possessing your technology, though." Grant nodded. "I concur. The question is how much they have managed to reverse engineer and how rapidly they can deploy it." The door opened, and Dr. Wells entered, her expression serious. "Captain, we've finalized the scans. The Xylos have indeed commenced integrating components of our technology into their weapon systems. They have modified several of their destroyers with primitive versions of our graviton implosion technology." "How effective would these weapons be?" Jax inquired. "Dangerous but unstable. They don't fully grasp the gravitational containment principles. If they fire these weapons, there is a significant risk they will destroy their own vessels in the process." Captain Grant's face hardened. "We must terminate this swiftly, before they risk using unstable technology that could result in widespread catastrophe." Jack studied her expression. "You have a strategy."
Yes, she confirmed, but it requires total cooperation from the Coalition forces. She tapped her wrist device again. "Grant to Valiant, prepare for immediate return and battle readiness." As they returned to the command deck, the Coalition representatives had assembled. Captain Grant addressed them directly. "We have 1 hour until the Xylos anticipate our surrender. We will not grant them that time. I propose an immediate coordinated assault between the Terran and Coalition forces." She rapidly outlined her plan. The human ships would prioritize the modified Xylos destroyers first, preventing them from utilizing their unstable weaponry. Meanwhile, the Coalition ships, now augmented with fundamental human shield technology, would engage the rest of the fleet and create a diversion. Admiral Zatharis nodded in approval. "A decisive strike. The Therans endorse this plan." One by one, the other representatives concurred. As they finalized the details, Jax pulled Captain Grant aside. "There is one thing I don't grasp. If your ships have been observing us for such a long time, why didn't you prevent the Xylos attack on Apex Outpost in the first place?" Grant's eyes showed a hint of remorse. "We were coming to that decision when we detected their fleet heading for your location. The Valiant was only barely in time." She placed a hand on his shoulder. "We will not be late again." A signal from the sensor bay interrupted them. Liam looked up from his console, his expression alarmed. "Multiple new contacts appearing at the system's perimeter. Xylos backup." On the main display, they watched as dozens of Xylos ships dropped out of hyperspeed travel. The Xylos fleet had nearly doubled in size. Dracon's face appeared on screen again, this time openly triumphant. "It seems our discussion time has been curtailed. Surrender or be extinguished." Captain Grant stepped forward, her posture unwavering despite the new threat. "We still don't comprehend what you are facing, Warlord." She nodded to Commander Hollis, who activated a communication apparatus unlike anything the Coalition had ever seen. "This is Commander Hollis to Earth Fleet Command. Authorization code Phoenix, requesting immediate deployment at Apex Outpost." Instantly, a reply came through. "Earth Fleet Command acknowledged. Combat Group 7, mobilizing now." Dr. Wells explained to the Coalition representatives, Quantum entanglement communicators, instantaneous transmission across any distance. Captain Grant turned back to Dracon, whose expression had visibly faltered. You still don't comprehend what you are facing, Warlord. The Cosmos gasped. An unidentified Terran craft materialized mid-skirmish. Space undulated and contracted as 12 colossal warships appeared at the edge of the apex system. Unlike the sleek predatory design of the Valiant and its sister ships, these vessels were clearly constructed for overwhelming offense. Each was at least 3 times larger than the Xylos flagship, with visible weapon emplacements lining their hulls. Their arrival generated waves of energy readings that temporarily overloaded the sensors on Apex Outpost. Earth Fleet Combat Group 7 has arrived, announced Commander Hollis, a trace of pride in her voice. The Jupiter-class dreadnoughts, led by Admiral Rex Karras. The main screen displayed the human reinforcements taking up positions around the system, effectively enveloping both the coalition forces and the Xylos fleet. A new communication signal came through. This is Admiral Karras of the Terran Defense Force. Apex Outpost, Captain Grant, please confirm your status. Captain Grant responded instantly. Admiral, we have formed an alliance with the coalition forces. We are engaged with a Xylos armada that has potentially adapted some of our technology from captured personnel. Admiral Karras's expression darkened. Understood, Captain. We will deploy containment fields around the Xylos vessels with suspected Terran tech. The priority is preventing any unstable reactions from their improperly adapted systems. Supreme Warlord Dracon watched the arrival of the human reinforcements with mounting anxiety. His tactical officer approached cautiously. Supreme Warlord, the new human vessels are unparalleled in our database. They significantly outmass our flagship and appear to be heavily armed. Dracon's pride clashed with his tactical judgment. The Xylos Empire had never retreated, but neither had they faced an enemy with such technological superiority. His scientists had barely begun to decipher the human science they had extracted from the prisoners. Deploy our modified destroyers to the vanguard. Target the outpost first. If their shields fail, the coalition leadership will be exposed. On Apex Outpost, the command deck had transformed into joint operational headquarters. Human officers worked alongside coalition personnel, merging their systems and preparing for the fight. Lieutenant Carrie Anderson from the Valiant worked with station engineers to upgrade their weapons with human targeting systems. These modifications will boost your accuracy by at least 30%. Your energy weapons are not as potent as Xylos plasma cannons, but with our targeting algorithms, you'll strike exactly where it maximally impacts them. Dr. Wells had been analyzing the Coalition's biological archives and approached Captain Grant with a concerned look. Captain, I've made a disturbing finding. Recent Xylos soldier autopsies show genetic modifications incorporating DNA from multiple species. Jax looked alarmed. What is the implication? The Xylos are not merely conquering worlds, they are harvesting genetic material to enhance themselves. The reports show increasing incorporation of traits from subjugated species over the past 3 cycles. And now they have Terran DNA to utilize, Captain Grant added grimly. Another reason we need to conclude this swiftly.
The tactical alarm sounded as Liam called out from his station. The Xylos fleet is advancing. Their modified destroyers are taking the lead. Admiral Zephyrus moved to the tactical display. Classic Xylos formation. They will attempt to breach at a single point with overwhelming force. Captain Grant nodded. Then we counter with precision rather than sheer power. She opened a channel to the human ships. All Phantom Fleet vessels target the modified destroyers first. Combat Group 7, maintain containment fields, but do not engage unless directly attacked. Commander Hollis looked up from his console. Captain, the Valiant is ready. The modifications to the Coalition ships are complete. Then it is time, said Grant.
Commander Talon, are your forces prepared? Jax surveyed the command deck, seeing resolve on every face, human and alien alike. We are, Captain. Then let us end this. All ships, advance! The space around Apex Outpost erupted into coordinated movement as human and coalition vessels executed their battle plan. The 7 Phantom Fleet ships moved with incredible agility, weaving between enemy vessels and striking the modified Xylos destroyers with pinpoint accuracy. The Coalition cruisers, now enhanced with human targeting systems and shield modifications, formed a protective screen around the station, while concentrating fire on the Xylos support ships. From the outer system, the massive Terran dreadnoughts maintained position, their very presence compelling many Xylos captains to divide their focus. Aboard the Valiant, Captain Grant and Commander Hollis coordinated the assault from the bridge. The ship shuddered slightly as it absorbed impacts from Xylos weapons. "They've improved their targeting," noted Hollis. "They are learning rapidly." "Not rapidly enough," replied Grant, as she directed another precise strike against a Xylos destroyer. The alien vessel's shields failed under the Valiant's attack, and its engines went dark as the human ship's systems neutralized its power core without destroying the ship. From Apex Outpost, Commander Jax and the Coalition representatives watched the battle unfold on the main tactical display. The exact synchronization between human and Coalition forces was unlike anything they had ever achieved. Where the Coalition lacked technology, the humans provided it. Where the humans needed tactical data about Xylos weaknesses, the Coalition provided decades of combat expertise. "They fight as if they've trained together for years," murmured General Corax with admiration. "In a way, we have," replied Dr. Wells, who had remained on the station. "Our ships are performing maneuvers designed specifically to complement your strengths." The tide of the battle clearly favored the human Coalition forces when Supreme Warlord Dracon made his final desperate maneuver. The Xylos flagship suddenly accelerated toward the Terran dreadnoughts, flanked by the remaining modified Xylos destroyers. "What is he doing?" asked Jax, watching the unexpected action. Dr. Wells studied the readings with alarm. "The energy signatures from those modified destroyers are becoming unstable. They are overloading their adapted human weapons." Captain Grant recognized the danger immediately. "All ships, pull back from the Xylos destroyers. They are going to detonate their graviton implosion devices." The warning came just as the first modified Xylos destroyer's containment field failed. The resulting explosion was unlike anything the Coalition forces had ever witnessed. Space itself seemed to distort and fold, creating a gravitational shockwave that obliterated 2 nearby Xylos cruisers and damaged a Coalition ship that hadn't retreated fast enough. "They're using them as suicide ordnance," Commander Hollis reported grimly as the Valiant narrowly escaped the blast radius. 3 more modified Xylos destroyers detonated in rapid succession, creating a chaotic engagement zone where normal navigation became almost impossible due to the gravitational distortions. In engineering, Chief Tech Paul Martinez worked frantically to keep the Valiant systems operational while compensating for the spatial distortions. "Captain, their missiles are employing our own graviton implosion science, but it's unstable. They don't fully comprehend what they have stolen." Captain Grant made a swift decision. "Target their missile launch systems first. We cannot permit them to continue using corrupted versions of our tech." She opened a channel to Admiral Karras's flagship. "Admiral, we must neutralize those destroyers before they all detonate, requesting clearance to engage directly." "Granted, Captain," came the immediate response. "We will establish a containment passage for you." The massive Terran dreadnoughts moved into position, generating a powerful energy barrier that created a safe route directly toward the Xylos flagship. The Valiant accelerated along this corridor, joined by 2 other Phantom Fleet vessels. On the Xylos flagship, Dracon watched the approaching human ships with a mixture of rage and apprehension. The suicide attacks from his modified destroyers had failed to reverse the outcome. Now the most advanced human vessels were heading straight for him, protected by technology he could not counteract. "Prepare the ultimate weapon," he commanded. "Target their station. If we cannot secure victory in this battle, we will ensure they have nothing to commemorate." The Xylos flagship's primary cannon began to charge, drawing energy from the entire massive vessel. Lights dimmed across all decks as power was redirected to this last desperate attack. On Apex Outpost, Liam called out the warning. "Commander, the Xylos flagship is powering up its main cannon. Energy readings are off the scale." Jax turned to Dr. Wells. "Can our new shields withstand that?" Before she could answer, Captain Grant's voice cut in. "Apex Outpost, be advised, we are moving to neutralize the flagship before they can fire. Maintain defensive stations." The 3 human ships accelerated to speeds that the Coalition sensors could barely register. They executed a complex maneuver, each approaching the Xylos flagship from a different vector. Their precision was flawless, firing at the exact same instant at 3 critical junctures on the Xylos vessel. The resulting explosion was strangely contained, appearing to implode rather than burst outwards.
The cosmos gasped. An unidentified Terran craft materialized mid-skirmish. 2 months after the Battle of Apex Outpost, the once damaged installation had transformed into a thriving hub of activity. Construction drones moved efficiently between sections, repairing damage and installing new technology. The station had doubled in size, with new modules built using human manufacturing methods that the Coalition engineers were still trying to understand. Commander Jax Talon stood at the observation gallery, watching ships from a dozen different species dock and depart. Earth had finally revealed its true self to the galaxy, and the impact had been far greater than anyone anticipated. He smiled as he saw the USS Valiant return from its latest patrol, the sleek vessel gliding gracefully into its assigned berth. "Quite a spectacle, isn't it?" said Admiral Zetharos, joining him at the viewport. The Theran admiral had become humanity's strongest proponent among the Coalition leadership. They could have conquered us as easily as the Xylos. Instead, they offer partnership. Jax nodded. "Update from the front lines?" "Favorable news," replied the admiral. "Liberation forces have reclaimed 6 more Xylos-occupied worlds in the Orion sector. With Supreme Warlord Dracon's capture and the dissolution of their command structure, the Xylos Empire is fragmenting faster than anyone projected." The door slid open, and Admiral Olivia Grant entered, accompanied by Dr. Katrin Wells. Both wore the formal dark blue uniforms of Earth Space Command, now recognizable throughout Coalition space. "Admiral Grant," Jax greeted her warmly, "welcome back to Apex Outpost." "Commander Talon, Admiral," Grant acknowledged them both. "The Valiant just returned from Earth with the latest technological enhancements for the station. We also brought something else you should see." Dr. Wells activated a small holographic projector. A 3-dimensional map of the galaxy appeared, with hundreds of tiny points of light scattered throughout it. "These are human outposts and monitoring stations. For a century, we maintained this network to track galactic developments while remaining hidden." Jax stared at the display in awe. "There are so many. How did you remain undetected for so long?" "Advanced concealment systems were part of it, but also meticulous planning. We never interfered directly, even when we observed conflicts that cost millions of lives. That policy has now been rescinded." The 4 of them moved from the observation deck to the newly expanded command nexus of Apex Outpost. Coalition officers worked alongside human technicians, learning to operate the advanced systems Earth had supplied. The only chaotic command deck now functioned with smooth efficiency, its technology a seamless integration of Coalition and human design.
Chief Engineer Alex Forrest approached them, his face bright with excitement. "Admiral Grant, the quantum communication array is fully operational. We can now coordinate with all Alliance forces in real time, regardless of distance." "Outstanding work, Chief," replied Grant. "How are the Coalition engineers adapting to the new technology?" "Remarkably well," Forrest said. "They bring perspectives we hadn't considered. It's truly becoming a collaboration." Jax led them to the conference room, where representatives from Earth and all Coalition species gathered for the daily briefing. The room fell silent as they entered. At the head of the table sat Ambassador Nar, who had been chosen to lead the diplomatic efforts of the new alliance. "Ambassador Grant, perfect timing," said the Meridian ambassador. "We were just discussing the liberation operation for the Xylos research facility in the Vega system." Grant nodded and took her place at the table. "Intelligence confirms that is where they took our captured scientists. The facility also houses prisoners from multiple Coalition worlds." Lieutenant Kari Anderson, now serving as the station's tactical officer, brought up a detailed schematic of the Xylos facility. "Based on information from liberated prisoners, we believe this is where the Xylos conducted their genetic augmentation program." The room grew somber. In the weeks since the battle, they had uncovered the full extent of the Xylos genetic program. The Empire had been systematically harvesting genetic data from conquered species, incorporating beneficial traits into their own genome, and creating specialized hybrid soldiers. "The Valiant will spearhead the Liberation Force," Admiral Grant continued. "We will utilize our stealth capabilities to insert Coalition Special Forces directly into the facility." Plans for the operation continued for another hour, with representatives from each species offering their expertise. When the meeting concluded, Jax and Admiral Grant remained behind. "I never imagined this level of cooperation could be possible," Jax said, looking at the battle plans they had created together. Species that were bitter enemies for centuries now work side by side. Grant smiled. "Sometimes it takes a shared adversary to forge new partnerships, but I believe this alliance will endure beyond the Xylos defeat." Their conversation was interrupted by an urgent message from the command deck. "Admiral Grant, Commander Talon, we've received a priority transmission from the Liberation Forces at the Vega facility. Operation successful. All prisoners recovered." They rushed back to the command nexus, where Lieutenant Anderson was receiving live footage from the operation. On the main screen, they could see Coalition Special Forces escorting hundreds of freed prisoners of various species, among them the captured human scientists, frail and injured, but alive. "They discovered something else," Anderson reported. "Massive data vaults containing the entire Xylos genetic research program. Dr. Wells is analyzing it now." Hours later, in a smaller briefing room, Dr. Wells presented her preliminary findings to the command staff. Her expression was grave as she brought up images of Xylos laboratories and research notes. "The Xylos were further along than we had feared," she explained. "They had already begun creating hybrid soldiers utilizing Terran DNA. These soldiers would have combined Xylos strength with human adaptability and cognitive flexibility." General Corax, who had joined the briefing, shook his massive head. "If they had managed to deploy such forces before we stopped them." "But we did stop them," Jax reminded him. "And now we possess their research. We can ensure no one misuses it again." The following cycle, Apex Outpost hosted a historic event. The Coalition Council Chamber had been expanded and redesigned for the occasion. Representatives from Earth and all Coalition species gathered as Admiral Grant and Commander Jax stood side by side at the center of the chamber. Admiral Rex Karras, representing Earth's government, stepped forward with a formal document. Today marks not merely an alliance, but the genesis of a new era for all our peoples. One by one, representatives from each species signed the document, which became known as the Apex Accords. It established not only a military compact against the Xylos, but a framework for a new galactic federation based on mutual respect and cooperation. Ambassador Nar offered the closing remarks. For centuries, we believed we faced the darkness of this galaxy alone. We now know that humanity has been standing watch beside us, unseen but vigilant. Today, we step forward together into the light. As the ceremony concluded, Jax found himself back at the observation gallery, watching the stars. Admiral Grant joined him. Earth is initiating diplomatic relations with 34 new species next cycle. After centuries of isolation, it is quite an adjustment. Jax smiled. How does it feel to no longer be concealed? Surprising, she admitted. We prepared for so many potential outcomes when we finally disclosed ourselves. Resistance, fear, even hostility. We never anticipated such rapid acceptance. You saved us when we needed it most, Jax replied simply. That generates considerable goodwill. Beyond the viewport, a new ship came into view. Unlike either human or coalition design, it was the prototype vessel named the Cohesion, the first ship built collaboratively by human and coalition engineers. Its sleek hull combined the finest elements of both design philosophies. In Earth's orbital shipyards, Chief Tech Paul Martinez from the Valiant had overseen the integration of coalition technology into the new vessel. It symbolized the beginning of a new epoch when humanity's long solitude had finally
Ended not with subjugation or submission, but with an alliance that would reform the cosmos. As they watched the Cohesion begin its inaugural voyage, Admiral Grant's communication device signaled an incoming message. She listened briefly, then turned to Jax with renewed purpose. Reports of Xylos activity in the tie-dye system. The Cohesion will have its first assignment sooner than expected. Jax nodded. Then we had better get to work. The galaxy won't reconstruct itself. Together, they returned to the command nexus. Human and coalition officer walking side by side, their steps perfectly in sync.